Hi folks, and welcome to the Truck King YouTube channel. 2023 is shaping up to be the year of the midsize truck, and here is the first new midsizer to debut this year, the Chevy Colorado. Now in this video, we're gonna take it for a drive on-road, we're gonna go off-road, and we're gonna explore all the new features on this truck. Let's start with the walk around. Now, first of all, the truck we're looking at right here is a Z71, and that's important because that changes how much power you get. It doesn't change which engine you get because this new Colorado only has one engine option. That's a 2.7 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, but yes, the power outputs are different. If you go for the basic work truck or the LT, you're gonna get 237 horsepower and 259 pound-feet of torque. Then step up into a Z71 or a Trail Boss, and you're talking about 310 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. They finally have the high output model. This is gonna be only standard on the ZR2, and it produces 310 horsepower, 430 pound-feet of torque. And I should mention that even on the work truck, you can get the high output engine. So if you want it as an option, you can get the most power even on the most basic truck, and I do appreciate that. This is definitely a different strategy from GM. It's one engine, multiple outputs. Oh, and I should also mention just an 8-speed transmission is paired with all of those different options. When it comes to styling, this is a pretty big change from the last generation Colorado, and to my eyeballs, there's just a lot going on here. Just look at the hood. There's so many creases and valleys and bulges in the hood. The whole front end, it's very aggressive, and honestly, I think it might be a little bit polarizing. Now, it does depend which trim you get as to what you get up front. So on this Z71, we get this kind of nice glossy black trim up here, whereas on the more basic trucks like the work truck, this is all just straight black plastic. So they all look a little similar, but each trim will have its unique style. And now, of course, I have to ask you guys, because to my eyes, it's a little bit too busy of a design, but that's totally subjective. So what do you think? Go in the comments right now and let me know what you think about the styling on this truck. And now, folks, our drive begins. So we've had the chance to sample a couple different Colorados today. Right now we're in a Z71. We also got to drive the Trail Boss off-road, and we got to go on a little jaunt in the work truck. So we're gonna be able to show you a couple of different trims and a couple of different scenarios. But for now, let's just talk about this truck we're in here, the Z71. And I think the first thing we have to talk about, Dad, is the simplification of the Colorado in general. You can only get this truck now as a crew cab with that short bed. This is the only way it'll come. There's no more access cab. There's no more 6.5 or 6 foot bed. This is all you're gonna get. And the more we look around this truck, the more we see things that look like they're tailored towards production efficiency. So rather than offering multiple cabs and beds, offer one, and that's gonna be that much easier and probably less expensive to build the truck. So I think that was the first thing that kind of jumped out at me, was again just the lack of choices here, and then just one engine. 3 power outputs, sure, but just one engine. So if you don't like a 2.7 turbo, well, tough, that's all you're gonna get, right? Now outside of that, we got to talk about just the drive. So this is the 2.7 Plus with 310 horsepower, but not the high output version. Yep. And you're driving that, so just tell us, what have you been feeling out here on these California roads?
Well, a couple of quick hits. The 2.7 is certainly adequate with power. However, like any turbo, it's laggy. And with that 8-speed transmission, it's going to try and save you fuel because at 120 kilometers an hour, it's only turning about 1,600 RPM. So if you put your foot in it, A, it has to downshift. B, you got to get it up somewhere north of 2,500 before you really feel the power come on. So once you get used to that, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But on the other hand, the other thing I can say about it, it's a 4-cylinder, meaning it's buzzy. It's just the sound is, again, you're gonna get used to it. but initially when you get in it, it's a little like, why does this sound so buzzy?
Fair. And one thing I will say is that in the work truck, there's actually less sound deadening. So it was even louder in that truck. In this truck, there's more sound deadening, and it's not that loud, I would say, but there's no doubt when you put your foot into it, it is not a nice sound.
However, there's different drive characteristics, and you know, we have to speak to the fact that the frame has gotten extensive work, right? That front axle has been pushed 3 inches forward. So think about all the other things that changed along with it. And the reason I bring that up is because I just found the last generation to be a little softer on road, a little more comfortable. This one I'm getting a lot more feedback, particularly up into my butt. And then the steering it's twitchy. That's the word I'm going to use. It's not a problem, but it's noticeable. So, yeah, different characteristics driving-wise to this truck as opposed to the last generation.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I felt basically the same things. This truck, I think the word I would actually put on it is lively, and I say that because, yeah, the steering is very quick. I will agree that the suspension just seems to let a little bit more of the road in. The last truck, you felt a little bit more insulated from what was going on around you. The steering was a lot slower. So, again, I'm not necessarily sure it's good or bad, but it is different. There's no doubt that it's different. And I will admit, I felt like the last generation was easier to drive. And I say that because when you have a slower steering ratio, you're just not dialing in as much, tiny inputs. In this truck, you feel like you're kind of always driving it, even with those small little inputs. So it's definitely, like I said, lively is the word I'm going with. It's a lively drive. Now let's take a look at the business end of the truck, and honestly what they've basically done is taken all the good ideas they introduced to the half-ton bed and they've brought it down here to the mid-sizer. Of course, you also get these excellent bumper steps, which I think is a great solution because they're always ready to go. Now let's open it up. You do have a damped tailgate, a very damp tailgate. Look how slow that opens. Now, the tailgate has new tricks. The first one is a measuring tape up to 48 inches. So if you're cutting lumber, you want to measure the fish you just caught, well, you can stick it on there. Now, the other party trick here, you move these two little plastic tabs. This guy opens up to reveal in tailgate storage. There is a drain plug here, so GM says you could put ice and you could put drinks in there. I think probably for tools it would work pretty well, and it is also lockable. That is important, so if you do put something expensive in there, you don't have to worry about it. Now, moving up to the rest of the bed, I think probably my favorite feature, guys, is very simple. 2 tie downs in each corner. Now, the half tons have 3, but still, I love hard point tie downs, and they've added more. And honestly, it makes a difference depending on what you're tying down. Sometimes you want the low position, sometimes you want the high position, so I appreciate that. Now, outside of just those hard tie downs, they've added in all of these points for accessory tie downs, so you can add more to the truck. You can also take lumber and you can fit it into these indents and make nice dividers here for yourself. 2 other things at the back of this truck. On this Z71, we do get a standard plug. It's only 400 watts, but still it is nice to have power out here in your bed. And then the other neat feature is Chevy has added this mid position to its tailgate. You use these metal brackets here on the side. You tuck those tailgate wires in there, and boom. Now, why would you want this? Well, if you're hauling a 4x8 sheet of plywood, you can actually put in those dividers with lumber, and then that sheet's gonna lay perfectly flat right onto the edge of this tailgate. It makes a lot of sense for hauling big stuff, and honestly, there might also be some applications where you just want the tailgate a little bit more closed, and this is gonna allow you to do that. All right, folks, now we're here in the Colorado work truck. It's our first time in this truck, and I got an open road in front of me. I'm gonna go foot to the floor. Okay. It's okay. I don't know, so this is the base engine, the base output, I should say, because there's only one engine, of course. And I don't know, Dad, it got up and went, but it definitely took a second, and it doesn't hit that hard.
Yeah, the turbo comes on, but not until you're up over 2,000 RPM.
Yeah, I guess we'll say it's just enough. Outside of that, I mean, you're buying the work truck to save money, right? So let's talk about everything else you're getting in here, because I think we had the same reaction. We got in and sort of said, there's a lot of equipment in this for a base work truck. Things like the large touchscreen, a fully digital display right here in front of the driver. What else do we have in here? Push button start, also kind of rare on the base truck. So yeah, I think that's the first thing that struck me, Dad. It's just doesn't feel like a base truck, really.
However, to your point, what you said earlier, because I was in the LT version just about an hour ago, and when I got in there and I looked at the whole screen setup, I thought, well, this is really nice. And then I got on the work truck, I'm like, it's the same screen. I think Chevy has figured out that it's actually a cost savings for them to just use the same one, rather than give you a tiny screen if you got the work truck and then pay to get a bigger screen because of the costs involved on the assembly line.
Yeah.
So if you're only building the one model, if you're only building one dashboard, that is why I think they can actually give you more here for less, if that makes sense.
No, I think so, and I think cost savings is a big part of it. And then the other thing is every company on the planet basically just went through manufacturing hell. You know, like it was so hard for them to produce trucks
everywhere.
Exactly. So I think when we've heard them say this, but as we look around the truck, you can see where they've done it. They really looked at this and said, how can we make sure we never have a shortage again? Yep. How can we make sure we can always be producing trucks? And that one of those ways is just simplifying the line.
Yep.
And I think where that's mostly going to pay off is in this base model, because you're getting the bigger screen and stuff that you just didn't get before. And I'm sure you're wondering, that's my mom in the back seat. She joined us on this one. Wave to the people, Mom. Truck mom's in the back seat. Truck queen. Now let's talk towing and payload. So if you go for that base engine with the base specs, you can only tow 3,500 pounds. But once you step up into the Turbo Plus or into the high output, towing maxes out at 7,700 pounds, which is what it is on this truck. So no, they didn't try to push that tow rating up too much, but I think for mid-sizers, 8,000 pounds, which is nearly where we are, that's enough. No one ever needs to tow more than that with this size of a truck. So I'm kind of happy to see they're not playing the crazy numbers game in this mid-size segment like they are with half tons and heavy duties. Now let's talk about payload. We always check the door jam sticker. And on this truck right here, it's 1,455 pounds, which feels like a pretty good number. If I do have one complaint though, it's that General Motors didn't add their trailering information sticker to the midsize trucks. I absolutely love that sticker. It's on the half tons, it's on the heavy duties. It tells you exactly what your tow rating is for this specific truck, and it is VIN specific. And for anyone who's ever tried to look up their tow rating, it can be a tricky process. So I appreciate that GM has done that in the other segments, and I was just surprised to see they wouldn't do it on their small trucks as well. So now you've seen the basic interior and heard our thoughts, and I think just overall, the interior is one of the places where this truck has really reinvented itself. The last Colorado and Canyon, they were redesigned in 2015, and yeah, the last 2-3 years, it's just felt really old and dated in those cabins. It's a lot of black, hard touch plastic. They just started to look not nice, and in fact, when they brought out the Canyon Denali, I just kind of looked at it and said, there's not enough luxury in this interior to justify that Denali badge, and they've totally reinvented this interior. I think it's nice looking, Dad. I think it's functional, but there are some little things we've noticed. For instance, there is no knob to control your lights. Every vehicle we've driven now for, I don't know, almost ever, down to the left of the steering wheel, you're gonna have a knob to turn your lights on and off. But what GM realized is with auto headlights, what do? You put it on auto and you never touch that knob. So they've totally eliminated it, and they've put the light controls up here into the center screen. Now there's a little light button right here. I press it, and then I get my options: off, auto, high beams, and fogs. I don't know, Dad, you can weigh in on this too. I think it's actually smart trying to look for things that are becoming redundant as technology gets better. Now on the flip side, we learned from Honda that if you get rid of something like the volume knob, people will be upset. And the volume knob has come back in all those products too. So what do you think? Is it a mistake getting rid of that light knob, or is it just, the way it kind of had to happen? Is it progression?
Yeah, you know what? I thought it was for about 10 seconds. And then I thought, no, because to your point, you've got an auto function. Most people use that. Just about everybody uses it. You set it, you forget it, you never touch it again. So yeah, why do we need another knob? That too is simplicity. It's streamlining the build process.
Sure.
Get rid of it. Now, I was okay with that. You see, it doesn't work with the volume knob idea, because the volume knob, you're touching it all the time.
All the time.
Okay,
Totally.
you don't touch the light switch anymore.
Yep.
Not since they invented the auto setting.
Yep, fair enough. And then the one other thing I'll speak to is that in your digital gauge cluster up there, it's a pretty simple, the simple buttons to control it. You have one button to go through all the pages, and that's about it. So I jumped in and I'm like, well, how do I reset the trip? And usually on vehicles, you hold down OK or a button on the steering wheel to reset the trip. Well, not here. GM has taken most of those controls out of the gauge cluster and put them in the center stack. So if I want to reset my trip, that's done in here. If I want to change up the information I'm being shown over there, I have to do it over here. And that's another kind of interesting difference. They've almost simplified the gauge cluster, but they've put way more controls here into the center touchscreen. Alrighty folks, now here we are off-road in California in the new Colorado Trail Boss. So I think the first thing I want to say, Dad, is it's interesting how they've positioned Trail Boss versus Z or Z71. And I say that because Trail Boss is actually based on the work truck. They take the basic model and then they add the 2-inch lift, the slightly wider stance, different tires, a G80 locker in the back. So a couple of these nicer options, a few things in the interior. And that makes it into the Trail Boss. So this is really kind of the budget off-roader. Now, the Z71, Chevy has finally admitted it's mostly a styling package. It's mostly about the way it looks, because you don't get the lift with Z71, but you do get bigger wheels, and again, different, nicer interior components. So they've really differentiated the two. Z71 is for the guy who might go off-road and you want a little more capability. Trail Boss is for the real off-roaders who are actually gonna come and run in places like we're at here.
Well, and I think the value in building the Trail Boss onto the base truck just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You know, you're keeping your costs down, but you're actually creating a practical off-roader. And, you know, so kudos to Chevy for like really paying attention to their marketing people who have been looking to see what guys are buying and how they're building up their trucks. So, you know, I mean, everybody wants a ZR2, but not everybody can afford a ZR2.
Exactly.
So you know what? This is a real nice alternative in a better price point.
Yeah, exactly. I like the strategy. So then, talking about the truck itself, we're not doing anything crazy today. We've had a couple of kind of articulation moments where we've been lifting tires and stuff, but not a very hard trail. Still, we've got a good feel for it, and I think first of all, Dad, this can be said of all mid-sizers, but I'll say it again, this is the right size truck for off-roading. It fits on this trail well, it doesn't feel too big, too bulky. That's my sense from over here. You feel that too?
No, exactly. I mean, you gotta love doing a mid-sizer. I mean, everything harkens back to Jeep size.
Sure.
Because as great as those vehicles were, the best part about them was that they were short, compact, narrow, and once you got off-road, you realize that that's what you wanted. Depends where you're running too. I mean, granted, if you're running in the desert, it's less of an issue.
Sure.
But, you know, we always look at it through our lens, which is Ontario, and we've got those pesky trees that constantly get in the way.
Yeah, and make the trails real skinny. So yeah, right-sized. Now another thing that they did, which is interesting, is that they actually pushed the front axle about 3 inches forward. So you're getting a much better approach angle, which is incredibly important. And then with that lift, you're also getting just better ground clearance overall. The only downside there is, yes, you do get a slightly worse breakover angle because you have more wheelbase.
Yeah, however, I'll be honest with you, and this is going to sound, you know, a little brutal, but if I can get up onto something, I'll drag my ass off of it.
You're right.
But if I can't get onto it, well, then they're game over, right?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that better climbing attitude by moving that axle.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. Outside of that, we also have new off-roading screens here, and when I go to them, you actually get 3 choices. You have your Baja screen, and I'll show you on the big camera. So the Baja screen is actually going to give you your G-forces, so if you are ripping through the desert, you can see how many G's you pulled, and then of course your steering angle and your transfer case. Then you have the terrain screen. That's your pitch and your roll, and your tire pressures.
Notice the little red numbers there as well, because I realized after a while what that is. That's the maximum you pulled during this off-roading session. So
Yeah.
I've had a 20% or 20-degree roll so far.
Nice. I love that the coordinates are down below too, constantly reading out your exact GPS coordinates.
Yes.
And then finally we get to the overlanding screen, and you get a compass, you get your RPM there, I believe, and then you get your elevation, which is, again, kind of cool to have all that information built right into the truck. Now outside of that, of course, we also have a full set of cameras here, so when you're off-road, you can go through your screen here, hit the camera button, and that's going to allow you to see all around your truck while you're rolling down the trail. Incredibly important for when you're coming up and over steep hills, so then you can actually see what's in front of you. This is not new in sort of the off-roading world, but it is new to this Colorado, and it's a very nice feature to have the full suite of cameras. Okay folks, so now we switched trucks. We are now in a Z71, and we're on the exact same off-road trail. We ran in the Trail Boss, and now we're running out in the Z71, so we can see the differences, especially between the truck with the lift and without the lift. Although the other thing we're also experimenting with now is terrain modes. Chevy explains it to us right in their screen, which I absolutely love. I think that every car should do this. They should tell you exactly what the mode does, because frankly, most people don't know, and it's not always self-explanatory. So in terrain mode, when you go down into low, now it's a one-pedal driving experience. And I mean, you're driving, Dad, so I'll let you take it from here. What's it feel like?
Well, it's very simple. All I need to do is use the accelerator. Even when I'm moving, it feels like it's dragging against it, meaning that if you're picking your way through obstacles, you're not going to get that sort of jackrabbit jump forward routine. And if you take your foot off, then it's like, whoa.
It's pretty aggressive.
It's very aggressive stopping. So, you know, you're just going to be more precise using it this way.
So I guess terrain mode is definitely going to be your kind of slow speed, picking through rocks off-road mode. And then when you go to regular off-road mode, well, that's for basically any kind of slippery surface. If you're in the snow and the mud, that's when you're going to want to go into just regular off-road mode. So I mentioned we're in the Z71, so this is a step up from Trail Boss. You're getting a little bit less off-road gear and a little bit more comfort gear. For example, heated and ventilated seats. It's kind of hot out here today, so we've got our bums cooling off, which is kind of nice. You're getting red stitching all the way along the dash, more soft touch materials, leather seats over the cloth seats. Sunroof, which of course is a big deal because Colorado never had a sunroof before, so now you can get it. So you can see where they decided to kind of put the features and spend the money on the Z71. It's just going to be a nicer truck that occasionally you might want to go off-road in. So the other thing we've been kind of feeling for here is, you know, the difference without the 2-inch lift. Now this trail specifically hasn't really illustrated that difference to us, but you can feel it from behind the wheel, right, Dad? Like in that Trail Boss, yeah, you just feel a little bit more confident driving into things because you just know you're sitting up a little taller.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a difference, not a huge difference.
No, but then yeah, if you do get into a hardcore situation, that could actually result in, you know, the difference between making it over and not.
Yep.
But it does depend, and this trail didn't really show it off.
Yeah, and I think that when somebody's looking at Z71 or Z71 versus the what the heck's the other one?
Trail Boss.
Trail Boss. They're going to be looking at it not from a off-road perspective, but from a appearance perspective.
Yeah, you're probably correct. Well, folks, we have come to the end of this one. Now, this video was just a little taste of the Colorado. We've only been driving it for one day, but of course, as soon as we can get one of these things back to our Ironwood test facility, you know we're gonna put a big trailer on the back, and you know we're gonna run it up the hydro line. But overall, I think Chevy did a nice job updating this truck with features that customers actually care about. So that's it for this one. Now again, please go below into the comments. Let us know what you think of this new Colorado. As always, while you're down there, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and then please come back here to Truck King to see what we are testing next. See ya.